Thanks for tuning in and welcome to Errant Painting. Today we're going to talk about understanding the die 6. In order to become a better 40k player, it's important to understand the maths of the game. And in order to understand the maths of the game, it's important to know something about probability. This is a die 6. Each side of a die 6 represents 17% chance of occurring, or 16.66% chance of occurring. This doesn't mean that you can't roll 10 sixes in a row, it just means that it is incredibly unlikely to happen. In a game like 40k where you roll literally hundreds of dice, your dice will have a tendency of evening out between the 6 results. This means that you get about 1/6 1s, 1/6 2s, etc. over the course of an entire game. It won't be exactly 1/6, but you get the idea. So when we talk about probabilities, it's not this will happen exactly as the numbers state. It just gives you an idea that this is probably how it's going to go. Now, it's important to mention perceptual bias, which I'm going to explain. Talk to any board gamer or pen and paper gamer and they're going to tell you that they always roll 1s in specific situations, or they are incredibly unlucky with dice, or something like that. They tend to remember the stories, the anecdotes where something went horribly wrong. And this is how our brains work. We tend to pay attention to when something doesn't go as well as expected. This is why, where I'm from, everyone will tell you that the train's always late, when actually the trains go on time more than 90% of the time. Because when things go as expected, you don't really pay attention to it. When they go horribly wrong, you pay attention to it and you remember it afterwards. So a lot of people have a tendency to have sort of a skewed idea of probabilities and how unlikely it is for them to kill something with a las gun, for example. It's important to remember that perceptual bias can give you an unrealistic idea of probabilities and how they work. But the important thing to remember when we talk about probabilities is that maths don't lie. So this is a breakdown of the probabilities of a single die 6. The numbers here are rounded off to keep it simple. You have a 17% chance to roll a 6, 33% chance to roll a 5+, 50% chance of rolling a 4+, and so on. Obviously you have a 100% chance of rolling a 1 or better. This doesn't really happen in the game, but just so we're clear in the math. An important thing to keep in mind when we look at this breakdown is that from a 6+ to a 5+, you have a much larger increase in percentage than you have from a 3+ to a 2+. Obviously it's still 17% between one and the other, but if you go from a 6+ to a 5+, you double your chances. Whereas if you go from 3+ to 2+, it's only an increase of about 1/3, from 66 to 83, from 17 to 33, respectively. One thing we need to keep in mind here is that to hit, to wound, and to save are mathematically interchangeable. This means that the sequence in which we do these 3 things don't really matter. See it as 3 doors that you need to go through in order to get to where you want to go. It doesn't matter if one of the doors is closed. It doesn't matter which one of the doors we're talking about. If you fail either of these 3, if you fail to go through either of these 3 steps, you don't kill what you're aiming for. Let's set up an example. In this first example, 10 Marines are attacking 10 other Marines in close combat. They have a weapon skill of 3+, so 3+ to hit. They have a strength of 4 versus a toughness of 4, so it's 4+ to wound. And they're all wearing power armor, so it's 3+ to save. Now, 10 hits with a 3+ to hit becomes 6.66 hits. The 6.66 hits become 3.33 wounds after the 4+ to wound. That's half of them. And after saves, you're down to 1/3 of that, which is 1.11 wounds. So 10 attacks becomes a little bit more than 1 wound on average. If we change the sequence, if we want to roll save first, for example, and then to hit and then to wound, it's going to be exactly the same result. If you roll saves first, your 10 attacks would become 3.33 successes. Then you go to hit, your 3.33 now becomes 2.22, and after your to wound rolls, you will halve that, ending up with, once again, 1.11 total wounds, or total damage caused, if you will. So, again, the sequence is unimportant. You need to go through all three of them in order to succeed. Another example, this time using 10 Imperial Guardsmen, you have a weapon skill of 4+, again, a strength and toughness are equal, so 4+ to wound, and a save of 5+. This would mean 10 attacks becoming 5 hits, becoming 2.5 wounds, becoming 2 wounds that go through saves. Again, you can change that around either way you want, and it'll be the same result. 10 attacks becoming 10 attacks becoming 2 wounds. A question I've seen asked in a number of Facebook groups is, what's best? +1 to hit or +1 to wound? And I've seen a lot of people answer with one or the other, which isn't always the case. Let's look at a couple of examples in order to answer this question, because mathematically the answer might surprise you. In this case, the 10 Guardsmen, where you have a 4+ to hit and 4+ to wound, as we just said, with a 4+ to hit, 4+ to wound, and a 5+ save, you will end up with 2 wounds. Let's forget the save. Let's simplify things a little bit, because the save isn't going to change whether you get a +1 to hit or +1 to wound. So, without any bonuses, you have 5 hits, 2.5 wounds, and then the save. We save that for later. Sorry, no pun intended. With a +1 to hit, you're going to get 6.66 hits if we turn this 4 to a 3. And that's going to mean 3.33 wounds. But if we change these around, keep our 4+ to hit, and instead get a 3+ to wound, you get 5 hits, becoming 3.33 wounds. So it literally does not matter. There is no difference between a +1 to hit or +1 to wound if the odds are the same to begin with. As I started out by saying, there's a much bigger difference between a 5+ and a 6+ than there are between a 2+ and a 3+. Getting a +1 to hit if you have a 6+ to hit is going to double your chances of hitting the target. Getting a +1 to wound if you have a 3+ to wound is only going to improve your chances with about 20% or so. So, if we go back to our Adeptus Astartes here, our Space Marine hitting on 3+ and wounding on 4+, he would benefit most from getting a +1 to wound, because that is the lowest of the two stats, so to speak, the lowest of the two probabilities right now. So, again, short answer, if hit and wound are equal, it doesn't matter, but if one is worse, you want to improve that. So what can we actually do with this information? I'm glad you asked. When making tactical decisions in the battlefield, it's important to know the probability of success behind them. Do you fire your lasguns at the Plague Marines or the Poxwalkers? Do you risk moving up so your opponent has a 10-inch charge into your gun line? And when should you supercharge your plasma guns? Knowing all of this, knowing the probabilities behind it, will, as a rule, mean that you can make better decisions based on the math. Because one thing is how it feels and how much you think you roll 1s when you really need 5s. Another thing is, and keep this in mind, math doesn't lie.